Hey guys, welcome back to Ironside Ranch. Now, when you're traveling, you oftentimes are restricted on what you can carry, what kind of weapons you can have. Carrying firearms traveling is, sorry, I hear the chickens going crazy. Carrying a weapon traveling is not always an option. It's always very difficult to do because even if we're traveling in the United States, we run into issues of traveling to areas like New York, California, Illinois, where they don't recognize anybody else's permit, and they don't issue hardly any of their own. So we run into these problems. Now, if you're law enforcement, you have some protection there where you have the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act, which allows you to effectively carry anywhere, but you're still under the restrictions of carrying weapons in places where they don't allow off-duty officers to carry, which again, you look at the laws on it, it's on a lot of the places, it basically makes it to where you can't carry. So even that doesn't help you a bunch. So, and it does help you some, don't get me wrong, there are certain perks to having that, but it is not the end-all be-all that it should be. And the Second Amendment doesn't seem to be the end-all be-all that it should be. And then when we look at traveling outside of the United States, we run into similar issues where we can't carry even pocket knives, right? So even a lot of times carrying a small pocket knife, something as benign as the Leatherman that y'all know that I carry, this is illegal in a lot of areas. And the laws can be so subject to interpretation. When my wife and I were in England, this was not legal. I could not have carried something like this in England, but I probably could have got away with this up in Scotland where it's more rural and they don't consider this to be a deadly weapon. But the simple fact is that you have a lot that's up to the discretion of that police officer. So the caveat here is always follow your local laws, and this may not work everywhere. But here are some thoughts on carrying where you're not allowed to carry a weapon, right? Here are some thoughts on how to provide some protection to yourself. These are thoughts that come from my training in counter reconnaissance, from various sources that I've worked with overseas and in CONUS. And these are things that my wife and I implement whenever we travel, and when we travel to places where we're restricted on what we're allowed to carry. Now, the first weapon that I would advise you to carry is a flashlight. A good quality flashlight. So I like Surefire or Streamlight, but there's other brands out there. Pick your poison. But a good quality flashlight, make sure you have batteries for it. Flashlights, these tactical ones are great for blinding out somebody, but also they make, if you have any kubaton training, if you don't have kubaton training, kubatons make a great weapon as well. But if you have any type of kubaton training where you know that you're striking at pressure points, I don't have to have a ton of training to know that if I put my hands up and you're coming at me and I strike you in the neck, this is gonna do some damage and it's gonna hurt. And so basically you gain two weapons from it. Now, if you're walking around, if you're going for taking the dog for a walk, maybe you can carry something like the flashbang, which is basically a big flashlight, baseball bat combined. You may be able to get away with something like that. I don't know the laws in your area, so look at those. To me, it would benefit me none here to have that, so I don't carry that. I carry a flashlight like this that again is very bright and effectively works like a kubaton. My wife and I also carry kubatons on our keychains. And if you guys don't know what that is, basically it looks like a big dowel like this, and some of them have spikes, some of them aren't, but the training is to be able to smash with it. So you tend to hold it at the bottom of your hand like that, and you're hitting pressure points and soft tissue, and those are very effective. We actually have branded ones, so anytime we teach a class, we give everybody a little kubaton that goes on their keychain that has our brand Timberline Tactical on it. So those are great options. Kubatons are generally considered lethal weapons or less lethal weapons. They're certainly going to be considered defensive weapons. So in a lot of places, they are going to be restricted. And we're trying to work around those restrictions, which is why we didn't include that in this one. Now, one of the things that you'll see people talk about like tactical pens, right? I'm not a huge fan of tactical pens. This is actually not a tactical pen. It's something similar, but it's not a tactical pen. It was like construction tactical pen. So it has like a, flashlight and laser level and stuff like that. So, and it's a gimmicky thing, and it was given to me, and so don't judge. But I don't like tactical pens, and that's why I don't own one, which is why my demo one is this. The reason I don't like tactical pens is, one, they're freaking enormous and they're hard to write with, and I tend to have my pens stolen from me a lot, so I don't carry them with me because you give it out to clients or whatever to sign some paperwork, and my pen's gone. So tactical pens you always have to try to get back. The other reason is tactical pens seem to cause they are certainly cause a sideways look, and they cause some unwanted attention. Now, they're great options. Yeah, if you basically defend yourself the same way you would with a kubaton, which is why I think you should get kubaton training, because there's a lot of weapons that can be implemented for that. But I don't like them because they draw unneeded attention. What I think is a better option is to buy a regular pen. Now these, I like zebra pens. If you guys are familiar with zebra pens, it's basically a stainless steel cylinder that's a pen, and it looks just like a pen. It's not menacing at all. It goes through every airport security without any problem whatsoever. But I like regular pens because they work the same way. But you got to be careful about what pens you use. You want a pen that's hardy enough that you can actually do some damage with it if you have to use it in a defensive situation. So stainless steel zebra pens are great. I buy those in like 12 packs, and so we have those laying around everywhere. My business partner makes these ones, which is why I have them, because they are, or my old business partner, I should say, he makes these ones that are branded with our logo and everything, or our company name on them and everything. And so we hand these out to clients, and they're still a hardwood pen, so they serve the same purpose. But zebra pens are great. I think it's $14 for 12 of them on Amazon. Buy 2 packs and never buy pens again for the next 5 years, and you will be good to go. So zebra pens are phenomenal options for self-defense. Now, you'll see people and they will take a piece of cord, right? Like a piece of string like this, because you can get this everywhere. You can get this on an airplane or something along those lines. And then they will tie something heavy to it, like a nut or, like a big fat lock nut or something like that. There's other things that you can tie to. I'm trying to think of another example, but anything that you can tie to the end of this. And basically, and actually I've seen people that would make a blood knot at the end of it, right? You can make a blood knot on the end of it. If you know what that is, it's basically a big fisted knot. And you can put some ball bearings in it if you wanted to, and you can whack it, right? And you can really do some damage on somebody with that by spinning it and whacking the crap out of it. The reason I don't like this is there's a number of reasons I don't like this. One, because you have to go through the wherewithal of, once you get through those security checkpoints, of actually going to the bathroom and making your little weapon that you're probably not going to end up using. So I'm not a big fan of that. 2 is, I certainly can't carry this thing around, walking around town with a string and a nut, at the ready to go. It's just, but I can walk around with a pencil in my hand or a pen in my hand, and nobody's the wiser. I could even do that with a flashlight at night, and nobody really thinks much of it. But certainly with a pencil and pen in my hand, I can have this ready. I can have this in my pocket with a hand on it, and nobody thinks anything of it. Carrying something like this is a little bit more bizarre and certainly calls some attention. The other thing is that something like these little goal whacker things are really difficult to actually control well and to use well. And it's not, you can swing it and fine, but you can also swing it and come back and hit yourself with it. That certainly happens if you miss. And so there's a certain amount of training that goes into using these that I don't think anybody's actually going to end up doing. So do I recommend this? No. Is it an option? Yes. Is it certainly probably better than hitting with your fist? Yeah, probably. And certainly has some options, but there's other ways of making these. You can take like a sock and throw a roll of quarters in it, stuff like that. It basically serves the same function. So, rock with a bar soap that you got out of the bathroom would work too, or a hotel room or something like that. That works, right? Soap in a sock, right? If you guys have ever, I don't want to give it too much of my background away, but let's just say soap in a sock is certainly a weapon that can do some damage, right? So it's called a sock party for those of you that don't know. Anyways, guys, that is an effective weapon. I find these weapons to be much more effective for somebody of a smaller stature that can't deliver adequate force in another weapon. This, a kubaton in somebody's hand, is a lot more powerful and a lot more detrimental than something like this, and a lot easier to use. But the problem that you run into is that something like this, because of the centrifugal force that this makes swinging, this actually makes a far better weapon for somebody like a 11-year-old child in school, right? And so, maybe they can actually pull this out during some type of issue and have a weapon that they can make very quickly, 60 seconds, and they're done. And it makes it super simple. So, though I'm not a big fan of this, right? Like I said, there's a lot of limitations with this. It can exponentially increase the strength of which that you can inflict some pain and some damage to an attacker. It's an option. Not my favorite, but it is certainly an option. Okay. Now, I didn't bring this stuff to do this with, but one of the options that you can do is you can take a pen like this, right? And if you have a nail and a thing of duct tape, you can actually put that duct tape right around the pin and nail it together, and then you give yourself a push dagger. And that's not a horrible option. If you're just, again, you're talking about trying to get somebody away from you, the problem is how do you get it out and everything. So yeah, it's a great improvised weapon, but to be able to stick out there, but you're much better off actually trying to carry a real push dagger. I think that is a weapon option. It's an improvised weapon option. Those are in lots of improvised weapon TMs. The fact is that I think you're going to have very limited situations where you would end up using that, right? So I can't see a lot of need for it. Now, obviously, if you can get away with something like a pocket knife, this would be an ideal choice. Some type of pocket knife. You do have to make sure that pocket knife doesn't look that menacing, because police officers in a lot of other countries do not have the same opinion that we do on this. And so you want that pocket knife to be in the form of something like a Leatherman, where it is a lot more utility looking rather than menacing. You don't want like a tactical folder with a Tonto blade, because that looks a lot more like a weapon. And so something along these lines works really well. Again, this has similar benefits to use as a kubaton, because I can really smash and do some damage with that. That's an option. I'm going to give you one last tip, right? And this is kind of the cool one. This is a steak knife, okay? Just a cheap Walmart steak knife, and you can buy these for a couple dollars, or you could even get ones that aren't serrated if you wanted one that wasn't serrated and didn't want to use a steak knife and wanted a kitchen knife. But you're talking about a $3, $4, $5 kitchen knife that you get at Walmart or the dollar store. These are really handy, and what do I mean by that? So this gives you an actual fighting knife, right? Something to actually defend yourself with when you're in a foreign country. So if you were going to fly into wherever, and realize there are some restrictions on this, but I can buy something like this, and I can buy a roll of toilet paper or a roll of paper towels, and that inner cloth, that inner cardboard from the roll actually works really well as a sheath, right? So I can actually put this in as a sheath and tuck this in my belt line, and then I have a weapon that I can then pull out and defend myself with. So it's an improvised weapon, and it works really, really well. But the other thing is that this is one of the first things that my wife and I do whenever we travel to a foreign country. If we go to a grocery store and we go buy a cheap knife like this, $4, $5, $6, something like that, so that we have a knife while we're traveling, because we end up needing to cut something eventually. So we have a knife while we're traveling. We have some means of defense for us. And then we get a block of cheese and a loaf of bread, right? And so that gives us a reason to have this knife in our backpack, right? So we get pulled over. Oh, it was for my block of cheese and my bread. And so for us to have a snack. And then we also have food with us, so it helps us out. So this is probably my favorite hack as far as traveling. To have some means of defense for yourself is by just going and buying a cheap knife. This gets tossed in the trash on our way to the airport. It's not a big deal. It's simply just gone. You could even, they're cheap enough, the blades are cheap enough. If you're really worried about like somebody getting your fingerprints or something on it, you could wipe it down and bend it or something along those lines. But again, a cheap knife, this will serve its purpose for the 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is that we are there. This will more than pay for itself in the aggravation it saves me. $4, $5, $6, $10, whatever it is, whatever you got there, but a cheap knife. If you buy a steak knife set, you can have one for each of you. So really good option, guys, and I like being able to do that. Okay, so that's it for the improvised weapons class, and that was just kind of a fun thing to do that people ask me about periodically, and I thought, well, it'd be a fun video to put together. So we will talk to y'all later. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video if you have not already done so, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.